Hello and welcome to this video on the role of dopamine in motivation. And I am here to take you through the fascinating world of neuroscience and motivation. Many of us have heard of dopamine, the so-called pleasure chemical that is related to feelings of reward and enjoyment. But did you know that dopamine also plays a crucial role in motivation? In this video, we will explore the ways in which dopamine affects our behavior, how activities that release dopamine can influence motivation, and why some people are more motivated to tackle difficult things. Finally, we will look at how we can leverage the power of dopamine to make doing difficult things easier. Part 1. The role of dopamine in motivation. To understand the role of dopamine in motivation, we first need to understand what dopamine is and how it works in the brain. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, a chemical that helps to transmit signals between neurons in the brain. It is involved in many different functions, including movement, cognition, and reward. One of the key ways in which dopamine affects our behavior is through its role in the brain's reward system. This system is activated when we experience something pleasurable, such as eating a delicious piece of chocolate or receiving a compliment from a friend. When we experience pleasure, our brain rewards us by releasing dopamine into the brain's reward centers, which makes us feel good and encourages us to repeat the behavior that led to our pleasure in the first place. However, dopamine does not only affect the reward system, it also influences our motivation to seek out rewards. Studies have shown that when dopamine is released in anticipation of a reward, it can increase our motivation to work towards that reward. In other words, dopamine acts as a sort of carrot on a stick that encourages us to keep striving towards our goals, even when they may be difficult or challenging. Part 2. Activities that release dopamine. Now that we understand how dopamine affects motivation, let's explore the activities that can release dopamine and how they can influence our behavior. Many common activities such as eating, exercising, and socializing can release dopamine in the brain. When we engage in these activities, our brain rewards us with a burst of dopamine, which makes us feel good and encourages us to repeat the behavior in the future. One activity that is particularly good at releasing dopamine is video gaming. Gaming is known to activate the brain's reward centers, which can lead to a release of dopamine. In fact, some studies have shown that video games can release up to 3 times as much dopamine as other activities like eating or sex. This can make gaming incredibly addictive, as the brain craves the pleasurable sensation that comes with dopamine release. However, it's important to note that not all activities that release dopamine are beneficial. For example, drugs that can cause a massive release of dopamine in the brain, leading to feelings of intense pleasure and euphoria. But because these drugs are so powerful, they can have incredibly negative effects on the brain and body, leading to addiction, anxiety, depression, and even psychosis. Part 3. Why some people are more motivated than others. Now that we understand how dopamine affects motivation and how activities that release dopamine can influence our behavior, let's explore why some people are more motivated than others. While there are many possible factors that can influence motivation, one key factor is genetics. Studies have shown that certain genes can affect dopamine transmission in the brain, which can influence motivation and reward-seeking behavior. For example, some people may have a gene variant that promotes the release of dopamine, making them more likely to seek out pleasurable activities and work towards rewards. However, it's important to note that genetics is not the only factor that determines motivation. Environmental factors, such as upbringing, education, and social support, can also play a significant role. For example, children who are raised in environments where they are praised and encouraged for their accomplishments may be more likely to develop a strong sense of motivation and self-esteem. Part 4. Making difficult things easier. Finally, let's explore how we can use the power of dopamine to make doing difficult things easier. One way to do this is by breaking down big goals into smaller, more achievable tasks. When we accomplish one task, our brain releases dopamine, which makes us feel good and encourages us to continue working towards our goal. By breaking down big goals into smaller tasks, we can get that dopamine boost more frequently, which can make the process of working towards our goal feel easier and more motivating. Another way to use dopamine to make difficult things easier is by finding activities that we enjoy and that release dopamine in our brain. For example, if you find cleaning to be a chore, try putting on some music and dancing around while you do it. This can release dopamine and make the process feel less like work. Similarly, if you find it difficult to get motivated to exercise, try finding a workout that you enjoy, such as dance or yoga. By finding ways to release dopamine while doing difficult things, we can make the process feel more enjoyable and motivating. In conclusion, dopamine plays a crucial role in motivation, affecting our behavior and encouraging us to work towards rewards. Activities that release dopamine can be incredibly motivating, but it's important to choose activities that are positive and beneficial for our overall health and well-being. By understanding how dopamine affects motivation and finding ways to release dopamine while doing difficult things, we can make the process of achieving our goals feel easier and more enjoyable. Thank you for watching this video on the role of dopamine in motivation. I hope you have learned something new today.